What's up, JEFusion fans? This is Philip and welcome back to another video. It's been a very long time since I last talked about gaming, and this is the first and hopefully not the only game review that we have for 2025. So let's talk about Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven. So this game came out on October 24th, 2024, and this is a complete remake or total remake of the original Romancing Saga 2 that came out in 1993 for the SNES. While the original game never came out in the West, in 2017, so Square decided to remaster that game and it became available in the West, but it was still basically the same game from 1993. So again, with that said, this game is very much different from the older versions. Judging from the design alone, it's again completely 3D, and there are so many changes that are made and so many things added into this game. So let's talk about all those changes. Okay, so first, a little bit more history, especially for those who don't know much about the Romancing Saga franchise. So, as you can see from the title, it is Romancing Saga 2, which is part of the Romancing Saga trilogy. And by extension, this is also part of the bigger Saga franchise. Again, all of those games were made by Square or Square Enix. However, despite the naming, this isn't at all related to either the original Romancing Saga or Romancing Saga 3. Actually, if you think about it, all of the games in the Saga franchise, including this one, of course, are standalone stories and universes, which means you don't have to play any of the games that came before or after this one in order to enjoy the franchise. So, again, you can be just fine with playing this one without having to know the story of the original Romancing Saga, for example. Again, they're completely separate. So with with that said, the story of this game, it doesn't offer much in the storytelling. So your goal is to basically defeat the 7 heroes, which you can see on the back of this packaging. However, while that is your main goal, so you have like the freedom to approach the story however you like. So the Romancing Saga franchise is famous for their open scenario or their free scenario system, which means this isn't your typical linear story where you have to beat one enemy and then another enemy in a specific order. So again, the main bosses in this game, the 7 heroes, can be defeated in any order that you choose. So you don't have to, again, stick to a single storyline. So, well, with that said, so the original and the 2017 remastered versions don't really talk a lot about the 7 heroes, while in this version, so they have expanded the story and the origins of the 7 heroes and like how and why they became the villains of this game. So I believe they have taken elements from the stage adaptations of Romancing Saga 2. So those stage adaptations like added new stories, like fleshing out the characters of the 7 heroes and then reincorporating them into this game. So you get to learn more about the 7 heroes. But we'll get to more of the 7 heroes later. So let's talk about the actual gameplay. Now, first of all, again, given that this is a complete 3D remake, so movement alone is already fundamentally different. So you get to turn your camera around so you can see everything around you and you know where you're going. And there's also a map where you can see where you are and while you are moving. which really helps a lot. So, like the older versions, so you can see the enemies in the overworld. So there are no random encounters here, and it's basically possible to avoid every single encounter except for boss battles, of course. So when you do engage an enemy in the overworld, so the only random thing about that is that you don't necessarily have to encounter a single enemy, and let's say you can encounter one or two or three. So again, it depends on the system, but that's the only thing random about the enemy encounters, or the normal encounters at least. So you can also initiate for this one what's called a sneak attack. So, or a preemptive strike, as the game actually calls it. So if you sneak up on an enemy from behind, so there will be a prompt, and if you press the appropriate button, so you do attack the enemy, and it does give you an advantage once the battle starts. So if you initiate a preemptive attack on the enemy, so the enemy will already be slightly damaged, and your overdrive gauge will also be filled slightly. We'll get into the overdrive later. So first, let's talk about the actual combat. So Romancing Saga and the Saga franchise in general, so it's famous for like allowing players to use different weapons in the game. So swords, great swords, spears, and so on. So of course, you do get to attack the enemies using your weapons, and there are again different weapons in the game that you can use. So uh, once you use your weapons and spells, by the way, so at the end of the battle, you get what's called technique points or technical points. So these points are what you get instead of your typical experience points from more traditional JRPGs. So the leveling up system in this game is also different. While you do have attributes, or you do have stats that you can see when you check out your character's attributes, they don't necessarily increase. So when you win a battle and you get tech points, so basically there are a few things that you will clearly see leveling up, which would be your HP, BP, or battle points. So battle points stand basically your mana in the game. So whenever you use a special technique, or whenever you cast a spell, you expend those battle points. And of course, whichever weapon you used or whichever spell you used, so those attributes also increase. So let's say, for example, I use a sword in battle, so every time I use a sword, so my sword level increases, therefore my damage with the sword also increases. However, when I switch to a club or a hammer, for example, so if that level is 0, so I go back to dealing minimal damage, and it will only increase once I level up my club, or again, the more I use it in battle. Or when I use fire spells, so my fire damage increases when it levels up, but when I switch to, let's say, water spells, so again, I have to level it up as well in order to increase damage or efficiency. So that's basically how this works. So in terms of, again, characters, so there are basically like jobs that you can recruit throughout the game, like pirates, monks, hunters, and so on. And each job actually has like specific affinities to like weapons and or elemental spells. So let's say, for example, you get the mercenary. So the mercenary is one of the early jobs that you can recruit in the game. So this may also, by the way, be affected by gender. So in the game, there are male mercenaries and female mercenaries. So the male mercenaries are experts in greatswords and axes, and the female mercenaries are experts with swords and bows. When I say like their expertise or affinities, for example, it means that they do have like preset levels with those weapons and spells, for example. So the male uh, mercenary has some affinity with earth because he starts off with a certain level with earth spells instead of like just starting from zero. So it is possible, however, to customize your characters based on how you play them. Again, if I want, let's say, for example, a mage that can wield a great sword, it is possible. However, mages do come with a preset affinity for clubs. But like other players that I've seen, like they also uh, level up like rapiers and bows, which is totally fine. But again, it is easier to level up like clubs. But again, you don't really have to stick to that. And again, the types of spells can also be customized. So let's say court mages, for example, because they are the early mages that you get. So the male court mage is proficient with water and wind spells, and the female court mage is proficient with fire and earth spells. So they can switch up their elemental affinities and spell types, again, depending on how you want to. So, talking about spells a little bit, so there are basically six elements in the game. So, you have fire, water, wind, earth, light, and dark. So, what's interesting about the magic system in this game is that there is actually one basic rule that you have to keep in mind. Skills or spells rather with the opposite elemental affinity cannot be used together. What do I mean here? So for example, if I have fire spells on one character, any character, regardless of job class, that character cannot learn or use water spells. If I do want to equip water spells onto that character, all of the fire spells that that character has will be null and void. So you really have to balance it out. However, there are certain like elementals affinities that can be like lumped together. Let's say, for example, so I have a character with fire spells. Okay, that's good. However, with those fire spells, I cannot equip water spells, but I can equip him with either wind or earth spells. So earth and wind are opposite elements, so they cannot be together. So in that case, I can equip earth and wind, or earth and fire, or wind and fire. Well, again, whichever you want to choose. But you can also add a third element, which is either light or dark. So basically, your character can have three elemental affinities at any given time, as long as those three elements do not contradict each other. So again, using light and dark together, it's impossible. So those are like the spells, or that's the spell system in this game. So another uh, hallmark of this game is what you call the LP or life points. So life points are different from HP. So of course, like HP is like the health of the character. That's obvious. However, what is LP? So, life points are basically the number of times where your character can lose a life. So, how many lives do you have, basically? So, those are life points. So, when a character's HP goes down to 0, you lose a life point. However, there are certain enemies that directly take life points from you. A very infamous example is one of the 7 heroes. So his name is Kazinsi, and he's basically the first boss that you encounter, one of the major bosses that you encounter in this game. So he has this technique called Soul Steal, which basically takes away all your character's life points. So once that happens, your character is gone. So when all of your life points are spent, that's game over for that character. Yes, there's permadeath in this game. So, well, you need to be careful with your life points, but there are also, I would agree with other people who review this game and have played the older versions as well. So you don't really need to care much about LP either. So, which one do you really have to follow? Again, that's up to you. So, if you're not prepared to lose a character because of permadeath, then be careful not to lose LP as much as possible. But the part where other people say that you shouldn't really care about LP, so this is where we get into the next topic, which is game progression. So, in this game, like I've said, there are no set storylines or like progressions that you strictly have to follow. However, you do progress through the game basically by doing two things. One is expanding your empire's territory, and number two, like being victorious in major boss battles, let's say defeating one of the 7 heroes. So when that happens, so there will be a time skip. Okay, so after that time skip, let's say after defeating one of the bosses or one of the 7 heroes, suddenly you would see a prompt or you would see a sign that says, let's say, 193 years later. So it's not really the same thing. By the way, that number can be randomized, but it is like some time after, again, claiming a new territory or defeating one of the 7 heroes, for example. So in that case, like you switch characters, basically your emperors. So let's talk about the emperors in this game. So if you look at the cover, so these basically are two of the main protagonists of this game. So again, there isn't really a set protagonist, but especially in the early chapters where it's basically your tutorial levels. So you actually start with King or Emperor Leon of Varennes, which is which is basically where you start. So he is your first protagonist, and as part of the early story, he basically dies at the hands of Kazinsi when Kazinsi uses a soul steal, therefore taking all of Leon's life points, which permadeaths him, right? So, with that said, Leon actually learned what is called the inheritance magic. So, this is part of the lore, guys. So, the inheritance magic allows the Emperor of Varennes to pass on his or her memories and will to anyone who is worthy. So, upon Leon's death, for example, he passes on his skills, his masteries, and all of that stuff to his son Gerard, who is on front and center. So basically, these guys are your main protagonists, but for the early part only. So once that happens, everything that Leon learns, he passes on to Gerard, and then everything that Gerard learns, again, like techniques, spells, so elemental and weapon levels, so you pass them all on to the next generation of characters. So you choose the next emperor based on the other job classes of the game. And actually, at the start of the game, you get to choose between two characters. So a male and a female character. Kind of like the Pokemon series from like Generation 2 onwards. So these two characters are what you would call the final emperor and empress, respectively. So they are the final, or yes, so as the name says, they are the final emperor of Varin. Uh, so they would be the last to inherit Leon's will over the course of the centuries. So basically, like this game, what's interesting is again, like the story doesn't really have much, but it is a generational struggle, you know. So, like again, especially against the seven heroes. So you pass on your legacy to the next emperor, and so on until you basically leave everything to the final emperor to finish everything off. However, when if and when your final emperor loses life points, it's game over. So you may have to start the game all over again, or like I don't know, like from start from the last checkpoint. But there is a special item in this game called the Anima Drought, or Anima Drought, uh, however you would pronounce it. So it is the only item in the game that allows you to recover LP. However, it is extremely rare, and uh, this is why, as much as possible, I try to keep my characters alive. I'm one of those guys, so do not let your characters lose LP as much as possible type of guy. So there is a special character in this game called uh, the Potion Making Witch. So there is an area in this game called the Witch's Sanctum, and once you find the witch there, she will be able to make potions for you. And one of the potions that she makes is Anima Drought. So once you get to that, I highly recommend that you uh, buy all the Anima Draughts that she sells as much as possible, because she has a limited stock. So once you buy, I don't know, like there are like 10 to 15 Anima Draughts that she sells at one point. I'm not really sure how many, but you should take advantage of that. She does sell other potions, and as part of your quest, she will make a mermaid potion for you. So, while she again offers like other kinds of potions, just get the Anmadrot, because it is going to save you a lot of hassle. But again, for me, I tend to use as little as possible. So yeah, that's how important LP is. So going back to the story of the seven heroes, so there are um, like special areas in the world where you can find like special discs. Okay, and you'll be able to find those discs by following a special glowing trail. So they're scattered all over the world of this game, and once you follow those glowing trails and find those special discs, you will be able to access the memories of the seven heroes. So this is where the game really adds to the story, or this version of Romancing Saga 2 adds to the story of the seven heroes. So you get to learn more about these characters. Again, where do they come from, what did they do, and how or why did they become the villains that they are in this game. So by completing 14 of those, so it does help in the extra content in the late game. So basically, uh, so what when once you defeat the 7 heroes, so there will be an extra dungeon that will be unlocked. So you defeat the 7 heroes in the final battle. So the extra dungeon is unlocked. But what happens with this one is that you're taken back to that moment where just before you fight the 7 heroes. So you'll be taken just before that final chapter is beginning. So you do have the final dungeon of the game, and then the secret dungeon unlocks. So let's say you were able to do that. So you access the final dungeon of the game, and by completing the memories of the 7 heroes, so you get to face the 7 heroes in their human forms. So they become monsters, by the way, to those who don't know the story of Romancing Saga 2. So by defeating the 7 heroes in less than 5 turns, so you get some very cool weapons and equipment. So I would say those would be the strongest weapons in the game. So if you complete the 14 memories of the 7 heroes, so you go to the secret dungeon. So you face the memories of the 7 heroes and you get their weapons. You'll be very, very powerful, and you get to unlock special techniques that are exclusive to those weapons. So once you get those weapons, try to glimmer them as soon as you can, so you can face the game's actual super boss. So once you defeat the super boss, so what you need to do is go to the final battle against the 7 heroes again and finish the story. So that way you unlock the new game plus. So the new game plus allows you to carry over like things that you've leveled up in the previous playthrough, like your HP and BP levels, your weapon levels, spell levels, and so on. And you also get to keep equipment that you've gained. So let's say you cleared the memories of the 7 heroes, or what I would call the trials of the 7 heroes, and get their weapons. You get to start the new game, right, with those weapons, making the earlier stages very, very easy. And you can do so, like, you can replay the game as many times as possible in that regard. So let's say one of the 7 heroes, so let's say in this center, so his name is Wagnus. Okay, so Wagnus gives you the butterfly sword when you clear his trials in less than 5 turns. So clear the game 5 times, and like you will have 5 copies of those swords. So imagine like all your characters, your party members, wielding all the weapons of the 7 heroes early on in the game. You will be bulldozing through the early stages very, very fast. Yeah, so that's the fun thing about it. And speaking of like the final, or not necessarily final, but the super boss of the game. So yeah, the Dread Queen is uh, I would say more powerful than the actual final boss. So yeah, that's why I call her the super boss. So she is the secret boss. So the Dread Queen is actually a new addition to this game. So she did not exist even in the 2017 remaster. So again, new stuff added to this game. So again, like especially the stories of the 7 heroes, so unlocking the Dread Queen, and the new game plus. So those are definitely things that can add to your playthrough. Now, you may also get to choose the difficulty of the game. So, Romancing Saga 2 is quite infamous for its difficulty level. Uh, whether you play the original Romancing Saga 2 or the 2017 remaster. So, yeah, this game is infamous for like very high difficulty and grindy nature. So, if you are new to this game, don't worry, there is like an easy mode, so like the casual mode. So like you don't have to worry too much about the enemies, so you can just casually go through the game and focus on the story. But I do recommend playing this at least on the normal level to have a well balanced experience. There is a hard level and there's the romancing level for the hardcore players. So, like, if you're into punishing yourselves and, you know, you don't mind a lot of grinding, then choose the romancing level or the romancing difficulty. So, I mean, it's really up to you. But yeah, what do I say about this game? So, I have always been interested in playing this one ever since I saw the remastered version. So, I've seen like playthroughs on YouTube and like on my phone, I did download the Romancing Saga Re-Universe app. So, at least through that mobile game, I was able to experience like some of the characters that appeared here in Romancing Saga 2, and I was able to fight the 7 heroes in that mobile game as well. So now that I actually have Romancing Saga 2, I would say personally it's worth it. So uh, I would consider myself a Final Fantasy fan, and having this one is a really fresh experience to me. And having cleared this game at least like 3 times, 4 times. So like for my first playthrough, I would say like I finished this game in about a week. But once you've gone through New Game Plus, like it really just cuts the time in half or so. Yeah. But again, it does offer a nice challenge, especially uh again for me who hasn't really played this game. So uh there are still so many things that I would like to talk about, but this video is gonna get too long. So with that said, I am going to give this game, oh, a 4.5 out of 5. It's not a perfect game by any means because there are really some uh, parts that I would say are hard, especially if you're trying to complete this game 100%. So, what do I mean here? So, there are actually some story branches that make it hard for me to decide which one to prioritize. So there is a mission in this game. So there's an area called Mount Cameroon, which is a volcano, and your job is to stop Mount Cameroon from erupting. So you do that, and like a generation passes, or like a generation or two would pass, and then you would be informed that Mount Cameroon is going to erupt again. Now, you have two options for this one. So you go to Mount Cameroon again and stop like a more fatal or a more powerful eruption. And the second option is to just let Mount Cameroon erupt. So what you basically did is like cover Mount Cameroon with a previous emperor, And imagine like shaking a soda bottle, right? Until it's completely blown up. I would say like a plastic one. So yeah. So if you so if you take the first route, which is like preventing the powerful explosion, so like you open up the soda bottle ever so slightly so that the gases and the fluids come out in a more controlled way, so it's not just gonna blow up on your face, which would happen with the second one. So you just let it blow up, right? So that's what happens. However, it would be important for two things. So if you prevent the powerful eruption, you get to save a town called Zemio, which houses a race called the Salamanders, so lizard men. So if you save them, they get to join your party, or you get to recruit them into your party. If you don't save them, you will have access to a new character called the Diviner. So, Diviner is basically like a Japanese onmyoji, or yeah, so a Japanese mage basically. So, and you will have access to dark magic. So this is the only way to get the dark magic in the game, because if you don't, so you will be stuck with 5 elements. So you really have to decide which one to prioritize. So do you want lizard men in your party, and by doing so, like, you also did what is morally right, which is saving the town of Tsukishima as well, or Tsukijima as well. So yeah, you prevent the powerful explosion, you save 2 towns from being engulfed in lava. And number 2, so you do let the explosion happen, like leave the island in chaos. So Zemio is destroyed, Tsukijima is destroyed, but you get access to a new job class. Well, that means like you don't get the salamanders in your party though, and you do have access to dark magic. So again, which one do you choose? So yeah, so that makes it really difficult for me to say that like you can complete this game at 100%. Maybe if you try different routes and different playthroughs. So I guess that's the beauty of this game. So like you have different approaches to the storyline. Like in this storyline, uh, I did this, I did that, but in another playthrough, I did something completely different. So, yeah, try and experiment with your timelines, with your emperors, and so on. So, again, that adds to the replayability value of this game, which is why I still give it a 4.5 out of 5. So again, like, if you do that, you probably might be able to reach 100% completion of this game. So that's my review of Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven. So this is for the Nintendo Switch. Again, this is also available for download or physical copy on the PlayStation 4, 5, PC, and Steam. So yeah, what do you guys think? Have you played this game? Have you played this game, or have you played any of the other Saga games? So let me know in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much for watching. This has been Philip, and remember, please do leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell so you get the latest from JEFusion. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.